Son, I've got some bad news. Trevor's voice cut through the terminal noise at SeaTac like a buzzsaw through pine. I stopped walking, my fishing gear bag hitting my leg, and stared at my 36-year-old son standing there with that look I'd seen too many times before. My name's Garrett Sullivan, but everyone calls me Tank. I'm 62 years old, and I should have known right then that the kid was about to screw me over again. We were standing in front of the Alaska Airlines check-in counter in Terminal C. I could see families all around us with their outdoor gear, excited about their Montana adventures, kids bouncing around with fishing poles, dads checking their tackle boxes one last time, mothers organizing snacks for the flight. Everything I'd been dreaming about for 6 months. Ever since Doc Patel told me my heart might not handle too many more of these wilderness trips. "What kind of bad news?" I asked, though something in his tone already made my stomach drop like a stone in deep water. He wouldn't look me straight in the eye, just kept checking his phone like he was expecting some important call. The kind of nervous energy he had had since he was a kid getting caught in a lie. "I forgot to book your ticket." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Around us, people were checking in with boarding passes clutched in their hands, talking about fishing charters and wildlife tours, planning which restaurants they had hit in Missoula. All the stuff Trevor and I had been planning during our Sunday dinners at my place for months. "You forgot?" My voice came out rougher than I meant it to. "Trevor, we've been planning this trip since last spring. I gave you $18,500 to handle everything." I know. He finally looked at me, but just for a second before his eyes darted away again. There was just so much to coordinate with the lodge and Amanda's work schedule. Things got mixed up. $18,500. Let me tell you something about that money. I didn't just pull it out of my back pocket like some trust fund kid. After my heart attack scare last March, chest pains that had me in the ER thinking I was done for, I worked double shifts at the Boeing Everett plant for 6 months straight. Overtime, every weekend, extra projects during the week, all so I could save up for this trip. This wasn't just some vacation we were talking about. This was supposed to be our father-son bonding trip, the kind my old man took me on when I was Trevor's age, back in 1985, when men still did that kind of thing. My dad, Roy Sullivan, had saved for 2 years to take me salmon fishing in British Columbia. 3 days of just him and me, teaching me how to read the water, how to handle a big Chinook when it runs. Best memories I had of the man before he passed. I wanted that with Trevor, wanted to pass down what my father taught me. Show him that there's more to life than his insurance sales job and Amanda's constant shopping trips to Bellevue Square. Show him what it means to be a Sullivan man, someone who keeps his word and stands by his family. I was already heading toward the counter, dragging my gear behind me. This had to be fixable, had to be some computer glitch. Maybe a name spelled wrong in the system. "Excuse me," I called to the woman behind the Alaska Airlines desk. She was probably in her 40s, professional smile, the kind of person who deals with travel problems all day long and has seen every sob story in the book. "Certainly, sir. How can I help you?" "I need to check on flights to Missoula today. There might be an issue with my booking." She started typing, her fingers flying over the keyboard with practiced efficiency. "What's the name on the reservation?" "Sullivan. Garrett Sullivan. But there might be a problem with how it was booked." More typing. I watched her screen reflected in her glasses, seeing scrolling lists of names and flight numbers. Her professional smile started to fade as she searched. "I'm not seeing any reservation under that name, sir." "Are you sure it was booked with Alaska Airlines?" My chest got tight. Not the heart attack kind of tight, but close. The kind of tightness you get when you're starting to realize that something's very wrong and you're not going to like where this is heading. It has to be there. My son and his family should have tickets on the same flight. "Let me check under your son's name then." Her fingers moved across the keyboard again. "What dates were you looking to travel? Today? Right now?" "Flight 4047 to Missoula, departing at 3:20 p.m. She nodded, kept typing, and I could see the screen reflected in her glasses as she scrolled through whatever system they use to track reservations. "I do see a reservation for Trevor Sullivan, party of 3, departing at 3:20 p.m. today. Party of 3, not 4. Not father and son and daughter-in-law and family friend. Just 3. The terminal started to feel like it was spinning around me. People were still moving past us with their luggage, but everything seemed to slow down like I was watching it all through the thick glass. "That's impossible," I said. my voice sounding hollow in my own ears. Check again. Maybe it's under a different first name. Or maybe there's a separate reservation. I've checked twice, sir. The reservation shows Trevor Sullivan, Amanda Sullivan, and Kyle Patterson. 3 passengers total. 3 passengers. Trevor, Amanda, and Kyle. Kyle Patterson, Trevor's drinking buddy from work. The guy who had been laid off from Microsoft 6 months ago and had been mooching off friends ever since. No Garrett, no Tank, no father who'd worked double shifts for 6 months to make this dream happen. Would you like me to see what's available on standby? The airline agent asked, her voice gentle. Like she was talking to someone who'd just received bad news from a doctor. Hope flickered for about half a second. Yes, anything. I'll pay whatever it costs. She kept typing, her expression getting more sympathetic by the minute. I'm sorry, but we're completely booked. Today. There's a fishing convention in Montana, and it's peak season for tourism. What about tomorrow? First class coach? I don't care. Let me check. More typing, more scrolling. First class is available tomorrow, but it's quite expensive for a last-minute booking. How expensive? $100 to $200. I reach for my wallet, but Trevor grabbed my arm hard enough to leave fingerprints. Dad, we need to talk. I shook him off, probably harder than I should have. Not now? We're fixing this? No, we're not. His grip got tighter, and he pulled me away from the counter like I was some confused old man wandering around the airport. This isn't going to work. The airline lady watched us with that concerned look people get when they're witnessing a family meltdown in public. A couple of other passengers started staring. Some kid pointed at my fishing gear that had fallen over when Trevor grabbed me. Tackle box, spilling open and showing off the new lures I'd bought specifically for Montana trout. What do you mean it's not going to work? I picked up my stuff, my hands shaking a little from anger or shock or both. There's got to be another airline, another flight. Dad, listen to me. Trevor's voice had this edge I'd never heard before, like he was talking to an employee he was about to fire. The trip is happening today, right now. Amanda and I are already checked in, and we're not missing our flight. Wait a minute. Something about the way he said that. Amanda's going? I thought this was supposed to be our trip, father and son. Well, yeah, she's always wanted to see Montana, and the lodge had space for 3 people. 3 people. My brain was trying to process what he was telling me, but it felt like trying to understand a foreign language. This whole time, while we'd been planning what I thought was a father-son fishing trip, Trevor had been planning a romantic getaway with his wife using my money. Trevor, this was supposed to be like when Grandpa Roy took me fishing. Remember I told you that story 100 times? 3 days with just him and me, learning how to be a man. Learning what it means to be a Sullivan. Things changed, Dad. The departure board flickered above us, updating flight times. The 3:20 Alaska flight now showed final boarding in red letters that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Trevor, you're scaring me here. What's really going on? He checked his phone again, more nervous now, like someone was timing him. What's going on is you need to go home, Dad. You're too old for this wilderness stuff anyway. Too old. The words hung in the air like exhaust fumes from a diesel truck. Around us, travelers kept moving with their boarding passes, heading off to their adventures together. Real families who actually wanted to spend time with each other. And here I was getting told by my own son that I was too old to go on the trip I'd paid for. Too old? My voice cracked like I was 13 again. I'm 62, not 92. I spent 6 years in the Marines, worked 34 years building airplanes. I think I can handle a fishing lodge, and we appreciate everything you've done. We really do. But standing here arguing isn't helping anyone. That's when I saw it in his eyes. Not panic about a forgotten ticket. Not guilt about screwing up the reservations. Relief. Like he'd been planning this moment all along. And now he just wanted to get it over with so he could go enjoy his vacation. Just go home, he said, already backing toward the security checkpoint. We'll call you from Montana. Maybe bring you back a trout or something. A trout. Like I was a dog who'd be happy with table scraps. Like 34 years at Boeing and 6 years serving my country meant nothing. Like raising him from a baby after his mother Patricia died 3 years ago meant nothing. Trevor, wait. I tried to follow him, but he was moving fast now, Amanda appearing at his side from wherever she'd been hiding during this conversation. She gave me a little wave like we were saying goodbye after Sunday dinner, instead of me getting abandoned at an airport. "Sorry, Tank," she called over her shoulder. "Emergency came up. You understand?" No, I didn't understand. I stood there watching my son and daughter-in-law disappear into the security line, watching them show their boarding passes to the TSA agent, watching them head toward the gate for their Montana adventure. The adventure I'd paid for. The adventure that was supposed to be about me teaching my son the things my father taught me. But as I stood there, something else was happening in my mind. The fog of confusion and hurt was starting to clear, replaced by something harder. Something that had been building pressure like steam in a boiler ever since Trevor had grabbed my arm and told me I was too old for wilderness adventures. The Alaska Airlines counter felt like my only anchor in a world that had suddenly stopped making sense. I walked back to the same agent, and she recognized me right away. "Sir, were you able to work things out with your family? Actually, I need you to check something for me." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Probably because 34 years of dealing with Boeing supervisors had taught me how to keep my cool when everything was falling apart. That reservation under Trevor Sullivan. When was it booked? She hesitated, looking toward security where Trevor had vanished. "I'm not supposed to share booking details, but you seem like you're having a difficult day." Her fingers moved over the keyboard. "It shows here that it was booked 8 weeks ago. Party of 3, 3 adults. 8 weeks ago. Not 6 months when we'd first talked about the trip over Sunday dinner. Not last week when Trevor said he was finalizing all the details. 8 weeks ago, when he'd already decided I wouldn't be part of my own vacation." "And were there any changes made to add additional passengers?" I asked, though I already knew what the answer would be. "No, sir. The reservation has remained unchanged since the original booking." My legs felt weak, like someone had just told me my ship was taking on water. I gripped the counter edge, the metal cool under my palms, trying to steady myself while my world tilted sideways. 8 weeks ago. That would put it right around August 20th. The same day I'd gotten the all clear from my cardiologist after 3 months of tests following my heart episode. Dr. Patel had looked at my EKG results and said, "Garrett, your heart is strong. You've got many good years ahead of you, but don't waste them. Don't waste them." I'd walked out of that medical center feeling like I'd been given a second chance. Like maybe it was time to focus on what really mattered: family, relationships, passing down the things my father had taught me. That same afternoon, Trevor had called about the Montana trip, all excited about some exclusive lodge he'd found. "Dad, you're gonna love this place," he'd said. "It's exactly what you always talked about, real Montana, like Grandpa Roy showed you." And I'd transferred the $18,500 without hesitation, trusting my son completely. Funny how life works sometimes. The day I thought I was investing in my future with my son was actually the day he was finalizing plans to cut me out of it. "What about other airlines?" I asked, though my voice sounded hollow now, like it was coming from someone else. "Anything to Missoula today? Tomorrow? This week?" She checked, and her expression got more sympathetic with each search. The kind of look you get from a nurse when the test results aren't good. "I'm afraid it's convention season. United has a waiting list of 89 people. Delta is booked solid through next Thursday. Next Thursday? By then, the trip would be half over." The fishing charter I'd specifically requested, the one that went after the big rainbows in deep water, would have come and gone. All those plans I'd made, all those dreams about finally connecting with my son the way my father connected with me, would be nothing but missed opportunities. The convention, right? The Montana Fishing and Outdoor Convention that happens every October. I'd read about it in Field and Stream, how it brings thousands of people to the area, how you have to book accommodations months in advance. Trevor knew about that convention. We'd talked about it during one of our Sunday dinners. He'd made sure to book during the busiest week of the year, when there'd be no chance of me finding a last-minute alternative. This wasn't just betrayal, this was premeditated betrayal. "There is one option," the agent offered quietly, like she was throwing me a life preserver. "We have a red-eye tonight with one stop in Denver. Get you there Friday morning, but it's quite expensive." "How expensive?" $200. I started to reach for my credit card, my hand moving automatically toward my wallet. Then I stopped. In the distance, I could see the gate for the Alaska flight. Through the big windows, I could make out Trevor and Amanda in the boarding area, probably texting friends about their amazing Montana adventure. The Owl's dead problem, me, had been handled, disposed of, filed away. "Sir?" The agent's voice seemed to come from far away. He knew, I said, more to myself than to her. All along, he knew. I'm sorry. I looked at her kind face, her genuine concern for a confused old guy who'd just been played by his own family, and suddenly felt embarrassed. This wasn't her problem. This was family business. The ugly kind that should stay behind closed doors where decent people don't have to witness it. The flight, I said. Is it still boarding? Final call was 10 minutes ago. They're probably closing the doors now. Right on cue, an announcement crackled over the intercom. Alaska Airlines flight 447 to Missoula is now closed for boarding. All ticketed passengers should be on board. I turned toward the gate. Even from here, I could see a few stragglers rushing down the corridor with their carry-on bags bouncing behind them. Families heading to Montana together, fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, people who actually wanted to spend time with each other instead of figuring out how to screw each other over. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text message. I pulled it out, hoping for a second that maybe Trevor had realized what he'd done. Maybe he was trying to fix this somehow. Sorry, Dad, emergency came up. We'll call from the lodge. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Like I was some burden he'd finally managed to dump at the curb on garbage day. The agent cleared her throat gently. About that evening flight, sir. Would you like me to hold it while you decide? I stared at my phone screen, reading Trevor's message again. No real explanation, no actual apology. Just a casual brush-off after taking 18,506 months of my excitement about reconnecting with my son, about teaching him the things that matter, about being the kind of father my dad was to me. Emergency came up. What emergency? The emergency of not wanting your old man around while you and your wife play house in Montana on his dime? No, I said, sliding the phone back into my pocket. No, I don't think so. Are you sure? I can hold it for 15 minutes, I'm sure. Because standing there in that terminal, with the smell of airport coffee and the sound of rolling luggage all around me, I realized something important. This wasn't about a forgotten ticket or poor planning, or even Trevor being selfish. This was about who they thought I was, who they thought they could treat like a fool. The departure board updated again. Alaska Flight 447 now showed departed in stark black letters. Trevor and Amanda were airborne, probably already getting served those little bags of pretzels and complimentary soft drinks, congratulating themselves on how smoothly they'd handled the situation. But they'd made a calculation about Garrett Tank Sullivan. They figured I'd quietly go home, maybe complain a little to my neighbor or my old Boeing buddies, but ultimately accept being thrown away like a broken wrench, accept being told I was too old, too much trouble, too inconvenient for their plans. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I picked up my gear bag and started walking toward the exit, each step taking me further away from the gate where my son had just disappeared with my money and my dreams. But I wasn't defeated, not by a long shot. Every step away from that departure lounge was a step toward clarity, toward understanding exactly what I was dealing with. This wasn't grief I was feeling anymore. This was something harder, something that had been building pressure like steam in a boiler ever since Trevor had grabbed my arm and told me I was too old for wilderness adventures. The taxi line stretched longer than I'd expected, but I welcomed the wait, gave me time to think, to let the pieces settle into place like metal shavings around a magnet. Behind me, SeaTac hummed with its usual chaos, families reuniting, business travelers checking phones, everyone moving with purpose toward their destinations. I had a destination too. It just wasn't the one I'd planned this morning. Where to? The driver asked as I loaded my gear into his trunk. Middle-aged guy, looked tired. Probably dealing with airport traffic all day long. The kind of working man I'd spent 34 years alongside at Boeing, Ballard up near the locks. I settled into the back seat, still holding my phone, where Trevor's pathetic text message glowed like a neon sign advertising his betrayal. As we pulled away from SeaTac, I stared out at the familiar landscape of South Seattle, the industrial areas where I'd worked for 3 decades, the neighborhoods where other families were probably sitting down to dinner together, making plans that actually included each other instead of figuring out how to exclude their own fathers. Rough day? The driver asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I wasn't usually one for talking to strangers, but something about the privacy of that taxi, the anonymity of confessing to someone I'd never see again, made it easier. Ever have your family turn on you? He laughed, but not with humor. The bitter kind of laugh you hear in factory break rooms when someone's talking about their divorce lawyer. Brother, I got an ex-wife who's been planning my funeral for 15 years. Family's the ones who know exactly where to stick the knife. The knife. That's exactly what it felt like. Sharp, precise, and aimed right at the place where it would do the most damage. As we drove through the Burien area, I started thinking back over the past few months. All those Sunday dinners at my place. Trevor showing up with Amanda, both of them talking about how excited they were for Montana, how it was going to be such a great bonding experience, how much it meant to them that I was making it possible. Me picking up the tab every time we went to Red Robin or Olive Garden. Me transferring money for deposits and equipment and reservations. Always happy to help. Always believing that I was investing in my relationship with my son. Always thinking about how proud Patricia would be to see us finally connecting the way fathers and sons should. But now, looking back with clear eyes instead of hopeful ones, I could see the signs I'd missed. The way Trevor insisted on handling all the bookings himself. Don't worry about it, Dad. I've got connections in the travel industry. Amanda's comments about how older folks sometimes prefer different types of vacations. The subtle suggestions that maybe I should consider a less strenuous alternative. They'd been conditioning me all along, preparing me to accept being left behind, preparing me to believe that 62 was too old, that my Marine training and 34 years of building precision aircraft meant nothing when it came to handling a fishing lodge in Montana. You know what the worst part is? I said to the driver's reflection. What's that? They thought I'd just take it, roll over and play dead like some old dog. You planning to prove them wrong? I watched the Space Needle come into view as we headed north through the city, its familiar outline sharp against the October sky. Seattle, my city. The place where I'd built a life, raised a family, earned respect through honest work and keeping my word. The place where Patricia and I had bought our first house, where we'd planned to grow old together before cancer took her away 3 years ago. I'm 62 years old, I told him. I worked 34 years at Boeing Building 777 Stevens, spent 6 years in the Marines before that. I raised a son who apparently thinks I'm some kind of pushover, but I didn't survive this long by letting people walk all over me. The driver chuckled, the sound carrying approval. Now you're talking sense. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Amanda. So sorry about the mix-up, Tank. We'll bring you back something nice from Montana. Mix-up. Like it was some clerical error instead of a deliberate setup. Something nice from Montana. Probably a refrigerator magnet or a coffee mug with a cartoon trout on it. The kind of cheap souvenir you buy for people you don't really care about, but feel obligated to remember. I thought about the $18,500 I'd transferred to Trevor's account on August 20th. Money I'd earned working overtime shifts that left me so tired I could barely keep my eyes open during the drive home. Sacrificing weekends, missing Seahawks games, all so I could afford this one perfect experience with my son. Money I'd transferred without question, without asking for receipts or documentation, because you're supposed to be able to trust family. Because when your son looks you in the eye and says he needs help making your dream come true, you don't ask to see the paperwork, how easily I'd been played, how completely I'd trusted him. But as we exited onto 15th Avenue, heading toward my house in Ballard, something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, sharp and fresh, like a new cut. But underneath it was something harder, something that had been building pressure. Like steam in a boiler ever since Trevor had grabbed my arm and told me I was too old for wilderness adventures. They wanted to treat me like some doddering old man who could be discarded when convenient. They wanted to take my money and exclude me from my own family vacation, then send me a postcard and expect me to be grateful. Fine. But they were about to discover that this particular old man still had a few tricks up his sleeve. The taxi pulled into my driveway as the sun started to set behind the Olympic Mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that Patricia used to love. The house looked exactly as I'd left it 4 hours ago. Neat, quiet, ready for a week's absence. But I wasn't the same man who'd locked that front door with excitement and anticipation this morning. That'll be $67, the driver said. I handed him $80, keep the change. And thanks for the conversation. Whatever you're planning, he said with a grin that told me he'd been in similar situations himself. I hope they deserve it. As I watched his taillights disappear down the street, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't called in months. Tommy Brennan, my lawyer. The guy who'd helped me with Patricia's estate when she passed, who'd made sure everything was handled properly and legally. If Trevor wanted to play games with $18,500, we could play games. But first, I had some research to do. The key turned in my front door with the same familiar click as always, but everything felt different now. I dragged my gear across the threshold, the wheels catching on the doormat. Patricia had bought 25 years ago when we'd first moved to this house, home, where I'd planned to be packing for Montana tonight instead of unpacking from nowhere. I changed into my comfortable Seahawks sweatshirt and old jeans, the kind Trevor always said made me look like a stereotypical dad. Tonight, that felt appropriate. I had dad business to take care of, the kind that required thinking like an engineer instead of feeling like a victim. My office sat exactly as I'd left it this morning. Patricia's old desk, positioned by the window, where she used to pay bills and plan our vacations. Filing cabinets lined up against the wall, like soldiers at attention. Everything organized, everything in its place, unlike my family situation. The Montana folder sat in the second drawer, labeled Father-Son Trip 2024 in my careful handwriting. I'd started that folder back in March, right after the heart attack scare, when Dr. Patel told me I needed to think about what really mattered in life. I pulled it out and spread the contents across the desk's oak surface. 17 documents, each one representing another piece of my trust that had been systematically betrayed. Bank statement showing $18,500 transferred to Trevor's account on August 20th. I remembered that day clearly. Trevor had called all excited about locking in the early booking discount at some exclusive lodge. "Dad, you're going to love this place," he'd said. "It's exactly what you always talked about. Real Montana, like Grandpa Roy showed you. Lodge confirmation for Big Sky Mountain Lodge. Deluxe cabin, 7 nights, guided fishing package for 3 guests." I counted the names listed: Trevor Sullivan, Amanda Sullivan, and Kyle Patterson. Kyle Patterson. Trevor's drinking buddy from work, the guy who'd been laid off from Microsoft 6 months ago and had been mooching off friends ever since. They'd put his name down instead of mine. The trip my money paid for didn't even include me. It included Trevor's unemployed buddy who couldn't even afford his own beer, let alone a Montana fishing trip. My hands shook as I reached for the lodge brochure. Beautiful photos of guys holding massive trout, fathers and sons by alpine lakes, 3 generations of men sharing the wilderness experience. All the things I'd dreamed about doing with Trevor, all the stories I'd planned to tell him about his grandfather, about the lessons you can only learn when it's just men and nature and the challenge of landing something bigger than yourself. "Dad, you're going to love the guide service," Trevor had told me during one of our planning dinners. "They guarantee we'll get into the big rainbows. The guide's been working those waters for 20 years. All lies. Every single word." I picked up the phone. Not my cell, but the old landline Patricia had insisted we keep. Something about this moment required the weight of a real connection. The gravity of conducting serious business on serious equipment. Directory assistants connected me to Big Sky Mountain Lodge in Montana. The phone rang 3 times before someone picked up. "Big Sky Lodge, this is Randy speaking. How can I help you?" His voice had that authentic Montana sound, gruff, no nonsense. Probably spent his whole life in the wilderness dealing with city folks who thought they were tougher than they actually were. "I need to cancel a reservation under the name Sullivan. Let me pull that up for you." "Sullivan? Yeah, I got it right here. Party of 3, checking in tomorrow. Deluxe cabin, guided fishing package. You sure you want to cancel? Weather's looking perfect this week and the rainbows are running strong. Perfect weather, big fish running. Everything I dreamed about for months. I'm completely sure." A pause. I could hear him typing, probably wondering why someone would cancel such an expensive booking at the last minute. "Mr. Sullivan, I got to tell you, canceling this close to arrival means you forfeit your full deposit. We're talking about $8,000 here. $8,000. Less than what I'd spend on a decent used truck. Money that Trevor and his friends would lose because of their greed and betrayal. That's acceptable. You sure about this? This is a substantial reservation. Maybe if you talk to our manager, we could work something out. Partial refund, reschedule for next season. Cancel it right now. Tonight." More typing. The sound of a printer in the background. Official business. Being conducted. Okay, it's processed. Cancellation confirmed at 6:47 p.m. Pacific Time on October 15th. You should receive email confirmation within the hour. Perfect. Trevor would know exactly when I'd taken action. More importantly, he'd know it was deliberate, calculated, and final. One more thing, I said. When someone shows up tomorrow expecting that reservation, what exactly will you tell them? I'll tell them the reservation was canceled by the primary booking party. That's you, Mr. Sullivan, at 6:47 p.m. Pacific Time yesterday. Thank you, Randy. You've been very helpful. I hung up the phone and sat back in Patricia's old chair, looking at the scattered papers on my desk. In the corner sat a framed photo from last Christmas. Trevor, Amanda, and me around my tree, opening presents I'd bought, eating the prime rib dinner I'd paid to have catered from that fancy place in Bellevue. All of them smiling at the generous old fool who never asked questions when they needed money. Well, the generous part was over. The fool part, too. I gathered up all the Montana documents and put them back in the folder, but I kept out one piece of paper, the bank statement showing that $18,500 transfer. August 20th, 2024. The same day I'd gotten the all clear from my cardiologist after 3 months of tests following my heart episode. Funny how life works sometimes. The day I thought I was investing in my future with my son was actually the day he was finalizing plans to cut me out of it. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. For the first time since we'd started planning this trip, I wasn't lying awake thinking about packing lists or weather reports or whether I'd remember to bring extra leader line for the fishing rigs. Just deep, dreamless sleep. The kind you get when you finally stop pretending everything is okay and start dealing with reality. Morning came with typical Seattle drizzle, the kind of October weather that makes you appreciate indoor heating and hot coffee. I made my usual breakfast, eggs over easy, wheat toast, black coffee, and sat at my kitchen table reading the Seattle Times like any other Friday. My phone was charging on the counter where I'd left it, and I could see the screen lighting up every few minutes with notifications. I finished my eggs and toast before checking the messages. 23 missed calls, all from Montana area codes. The call log told a better story than any detective novel. First call at 1:47 a.m. Montana time, then 2:15, then 2:33, every 20 minutes through the night, like clockwork. Trevor had been awake all night. Between the calls were text messages, and I scrolled through them, watching panic escalate in real time. Dad, call me back. Lodge says you canceled everything. Dad, this isn't funny. Call now. We're stuck in Montana with nowhere to go. Call me. This is serious. Amanda's crying. We have no place to stay. Kyle thinks you've lost your mind. Fix this now. The timestamps painted a clear picture. The family had arrived in Montana around 2 p.m. Mountain time yesterday, probably taken the shuttle to Big Sky Mountain Lodge, excited and tired from traveling, already planning their first day of fishing. They had walked up to that beautiful log cabin reception desk, probably admiring the mounted trout on the walls and the stone fireplace, and discovered they had no reservations, no rooms, no guides, no adventure. Just 3 people stranded in Montana with maxed out credit cards and nowhere to sleep except the airport. I carried my coffee to the living room and settled into my recliner by the window. Outside, my neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, was walking her golden retriever, the same route they took every morning for the past 8 years. Normal Friday routine for everyone else in the world. My phone rang. Montana number. I let it go to voicemail, then played the message. Dad, I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, but you need to fix this right now. We spent the night in the airport. Amanda hasn't stopped crying. Kyle is furious and talking about flying home today. This is cruel and unnecessary and completely unlike you. Call me back and fix this mess immediately. Cruel and unnecessary. Interesting choice of words from someone who'd left his father stranded at SeaTac Airport just 24 hours earlier. Kyle is furious. So Trevor's buddy was there, just like the reservation had shown. The unemployed guy who'd taken my place on my own trip, now complaining because his free vacation had been interrupted. The second message was from Amanda, her voice shaky like she'd actually been crying. Tank, I don't understand what's happening. Trevor says you canceled everything out of spite. Surely there's been some mistake. We're stuck here with no money for hotels. Please call us back. We can work this out. No money for hotels? Of course they didn't have money. They'd put everything on credit cards, expecting to pay them off with more handouts from the old man. The old man who was supposed to sit quietly at home while they enjoyed his Montana adventure. The third message was shorter. Trevor again, but his voice had changed. Less pleading, more threatening. Dad, when we get back to Seattle, we're going to have a serious conversation about this. You can't just manipulate people with money whenever you get your feelings hurt. There are going to be consequences. I played that one twice, making sure I heard it right. Manipulate people with money, consequences. The coffee tasted perfect. Colombian blend, medium roast, ground fresh yesterday morning, when I'd still believed in father-son bonding trips and teaching the next generation about respect and responsibility. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Trevor's Montana number. My finger hovered over the call button for about 10 seconds. 24 hours ago, I would have called immediately, apologized for the confusion, tried to fix everything with more money and more accommodating behavior. But that was yesterday's Garrett Sullivan. Today's version had learned something important about consequences. I pressed the call button. Trevor answered before the first ring finished, like he'd been sitting there staring at his phone, waiting for my call. Dad, finally. What the hell is going on? The lodge says you canceled our entire reservation. His voice came through so loud, I had to hold the phone away from my ear. In the background, I could hear Amanda saying something about complete disaster, and Kyle complaining about the crazy old man loud enough for me to hear every word. Well, hello to you too, Trevor. How's your Montana adventure going? Don't play games with me. We have nowhere to stay. Do you understand what you've done? I reached for my notepad, the one Patricia used to keep by the phone for taking messages when people called about Boeing business or neighborhood association meetings. Some conversations needed documentation, especially when threats were involved. Actually, I understand perfectly. Tell me, when you planned to leave me at SeaTac yesterday, where exactly did you expect me to spend my vacation? A pause. The background voices quieted, probably because Trevor was realizing that I wasn't calling to apologize and fix everything with my credit card. Dad, that was completely different. This is about innocent people getting hurt. Innocent people like Kyle Patterson, who took my place on the trip I paid for. Another pause, longer this time. That's not... Look, Kyle just happened to be available when we thought you couldn't make it. When you decided 8 weeks ago that I couldn't make it. The lodge told me when the reservation was booked, Trevor, August 20th, party of 3, with Kyle's name instead of mine. I could almost hear the gears turning as Trevor realized I'd done my homework, that this wasn't some confused old man having a tantrum, but someone who'd uncovered the truth about their planning. How did you... he started, then caught himself. The lodge has very detailed records. Big Sky Mountain Lodge, Randy the manager, very helpful guy. Told me all about your reservation, how it's been unchanged since the original booking. No modifications to add additional guests. Just you, Amanda, and Kyle from day one. Trevor tried a different approach, his voice getting that reasonable tone he used when he was trying to sell someone something they didn't need. Dad, we can't afford to book another lodge. Everything's booked solid anyway because of the fishing convention. We put the whole trip on credit cards, expecting to pay them off with... well, expecting different circumstances, expecting to pay them off with more of my money while I sat home like a piece of discarded furniture. You mean expecting to steal more money from your father while treating him like garbage? Don't be dramatic. This isn't about you anymore. It's about getting out of this mess. I wrote down the time on my notepad. 8:15 a.m. Pacific, 7:15 a.m. Mountain. Trevor's voice carried the exhaustion of someone who'd been awake all night dealing with consequences he'd never expected to face. Actually, it became about me the moment you took my $18,500 and gave my spot to Kyle Patterson. How's Kyle handling his free vacation, by the way? Look, Dad, Kyle's been having a hard time since the Microsoft layoffs. We thought it would be good for him to get away. On my money to my Montana trip, in my place. You're making this sound worse than it is. Trevor, you planned for 8 weeks to exclude your father from a trip he paid for, then told him he was too old for wilderness adventures. How exactly could it be worse? His voice shifted then, getting harder, showing the side of him I'd been seeing more and more over the past few years. Fine. You want to play hardball? When we get back to Seattle, you're going to regret this little stunt. I wrote that down word for word. You're going to regret this. Trevor, are you threatening me? I'm promising you that actions have consequences, old man. Old man. I noted that too, right under the threat. You're absolutely right about consequences. For instance, the consequence of betraying someone's trust is that they stop trusting you. This is ridiculous. You're punishing innocent people because you got your feelings hurt. I'm teaching adults that stealing $1,800 and abandoning family members has repercussions. We didn't steal anything. You gave us that money for a family trip that excluded the family member who paid for it. That's an interesting definition of family, Trevor. Kyle's voice got louder in the background. Tell him I'll pay him back when I get another job. You hear that, Dad? Kyle's willing to work this out. Kyle's willing to pay me back for the vacation he stole. How generous of him. When exactly does he expect to find employment? Silence, except for Amanda's voice in the distance saying something about never should have listened, and this is a disaster. Trevor tried one more approach, his voice getting desperate now. Dad, look, maybe we handled things badly yesterday, but right now we need to focus on fixing the situation. Can you call the lodge and restore the reservation? We'll figure out the other stuff when we get home. No. What do you mean, no? I mean the word no, Trevor. It's a complete sentence. It's also what you should have heard yesterday when you told me I was too old for wilderness adventures. This is insane. You're acting like some kind of vindictive... I hung up. The living room felt perfectly quiet after Trevor's shouting. Outside, a crow had landed on Patricia's old bird feeder, its black wings gleaming in the morning drizzle. Smart birds, crows. They remember faces, hold grudges, teach their young which humans can be trusted and which ones can't. I looked at my notepad. Threats, insults, financial confessions, zero accountability. Everything I needed for the next phase of my plan. My phone started ringing again immediately. Montana number. I turned it off and finished my coffee, watching the crow navigate between the seeds with the kind of purpose and precision that comes from knowing exactly what you're after. Some lessons couldn't be taught with words. They had to be experienced firsthand. Time to call Tommy Brennan. That afternoon, I made the call I'd been thinking about since Trevor first grabbed my arm at SeaTac. Tommy Brennan's office, the lawyer who'd helped me navigate Patricia's estate, planning 3 years ago when everything felt impossible and I didn't know how to handle life without her. Brennan Law Offices, this is Linda speaking. This is Garrett Sullivan. I need to schedule an urgent consultation with Tommy about updating my will. Linda's voice carried the professional efficiency of someone who'd scheduled plenty of urgent legal consultations. How does Monday afternoon work for you, Mr. Sullivan? Tommy has an opening at 2 p.m. Perfect. May I ask what type of estate planning you're looking to discuss? It helps Tommy prepare for the meeting. I looked at my notepad where Trevor's threats were written in my careful handwriting. Disinheritance, protection from financial exploitation, and making sure my assets go to people who actually deserve them. A pause. I see. Tommy will have the appropriate forms ready. Is there anything else you need to discuss? Bring everything related to proving mental competency. I have a feeling we're going to need ironclad documentation. Over the weekend, I spent my time getting my affairs in order. Cleaned out closets, organized paperwork, updated my address book with current information for all the charitable organizations that would soon be receiving substantial donations. It felt good. Productive, like preparing for a deployment when I was in the Marines, making sure everything was squared away before heading into unknown territory. I also pulled together 15 years of financial records, bank statements, transfer receipts, loan payments I'd covered for Trevor, every apartment deposit since he was 22, every car payment when he was between jobs, every credit card bailout when he'd overspent. Every emergency that somehow always required immediate cash from Dad. The total came to $425,000. That's what I'd given my son over the past decade and a half, thinking I was helping him build a life, thinking I was being a good father the way Roy Sullivan had been to me. $425,000 of Boeing overtime, military pension contributions, and careful savings. All of it taken with the kind of casual entitlement that comes from never having to earn anything yourself. Sunday evening, Trevor called. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to his message. Dad, we're flying home tomorrow afternoon. I think we need to sit down and have a serious conversation about what happened this week. Amanda and I have been talking, and we're willing to work something out. Maybe we can find a way to reschedule the Montana trip for next year, include you properly this time, but This childish behavior has to stop. You can't just throw tantrums every time you don't get your way. Call me back so we can discuss this like adults. Childish behavior. Tantrums. Like I was some spoiled kid instead of a 62-year-old man who'd worked his whole life and deserved basic respect from his own son. I deleted the message without calling back. Monday morning brought the kind of crisp October weather that makes you remember why people love the Pacific Northwest, despite all the rain. I dressed in my good slacks and the navy blazer Patricia had bought me for her company Christmas parties, the kind of outfit that said serious business to anyone paying attention. Tommy's office occupied the 15th floor of a glass building in downtown Seattle, all polished wood and expensive leather furniture. The kind of place that charged by the hour and delivered results worth every penny. Through the windows, you could see Elliott Bay stretching out toward the Olympic Mountains, ferries moving back and forth like toys in a bathtub. "Garrett, come in." Tommy stood to greet me, his handshake firm and professional. At 45, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd spent years solving other people's complicated problems. "Linda mentioned you're looking at estate planning changes. What's the situation?" I settled into the leather chair across from his mahogany desk and spread out my documentation like evidence in a criminal trial. Bank statements, receipts, text messages, notes from phone calls. Everything organized the way we used to organize technical specs at Boeing. Methodical, thorough, designed to tell a story that couldn't be argued with. My son has shown me who he really is. I need legal protection from his greed. The story came out chronologically, like a project briefing. The planned Montana trip, Trevor's deliberate exclusion at the airport, the lodge cancellation, 23 desperate phone calls, and finally those ugly threats when he realized I wouldn't be manipulated anymore. Tommy took notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions that showed he'd handled plenty of family disputes, the kind of questions that cut through emotion and got to the facts that would matter in court. How long has this financial dependency been going on? 15 years minimum. I have documentation going back to his first apartment deposit when he was 22. Tommy's eyebrows went up slightly. "We're talking about substantial amounts over time?" I pulled out the summary I'd prepared over the weekend, totaling up 15 years of help with rent, car payments, credit card debt, medical bills, and various emergencies that always seemed to require immediate cash infusions. $425,000. That's what I've given him since 2009. Tommy whistled softly. That's well into inheritance-level money, and the threats were specific. I slid my notepad across his desk, opened to the page where I'd written down Trevor's exact words. "You're going to regret this, old man. Actions have consequences." Tommy studied the notes, his expression growing more serious as he read. "Garrett, this sounds like attempted financial coercion under Washington state law. That's solid grounds for disinheritance with legal protection against challenges." The relief felt physical, like setting down a weight I'd been carrying without realizing how heavy it had become. "I want him completely excluded," I said. "Everything I've built goes to organizations that will actually use it for good." For the next hour, we discussed details that would have made Patricia proud. The Veterans Administration would receive the largest portion of my estate, $200,000, to help guys coming back from overseas deployments who were struggling with PTSD and finding work. American Legion programs would get $100,000 to help veterans with housing and medical bills. Local youth fishing programs would receive $75,000. Teaching kids from tough neighborhoods how to cast a line and find something positive to focus on instead of getting into trouble. Community development programs, senior services, organizations run by people who understood that money comes with responsibility, not entitlement. "The documentation you've provided shows a clear pattern of financial exploitation," Tommy said, reviewing my bank statements and the timeline of Trevor's betrayal. "Combined with the threatening language and premeditated exclusion from the Montana trip, we have ironclad grounds for disinheritance. How long will this take? I can have documents ready for signature by Friday. We'll need witnesses, notarization, and I'd recommend a video recording of the signing to document your mental competency and free will, whatever it takes." Tommy leaned back in his chair, studying me with the careful attention of someone making sure his client understood the full implications of what they were proposing. "Garrett, this is permanent. Once executed, this will fundamentally change your family relationships. There's no going back from something like this. I thought about Trevor's voice on the phone, calling me old man like it was an insult. About Kyle Patterson sleeping in Montana, lodges on my dime while I sat home feeling like a fool. About Amanda's fake tears and manipulative text messages. They changed the relationship first, I said. I'm just making it official. Friday afternoon, Tommy called with the news I'd been waiting for. The documents are ready, Garrett. Can you come in Monday morning for the signing? I'd like to schedule it early, around 9 a.m., when everyone's fresh and focused. Absolutely. Just to confirm, you're still committed to these changes? No second thoughts over the weekend? I looked around my living room at the family photos lining the mantelpiece. Trevor's high school graduation, his wedding to Amanda, Christmas mornings, when he still seemed to enjoy spending time with his old man. They were good memories, but they belonged to a different person. The person Trevor used to be before he decided I was just a wallet with legs, more committed than ever. Good. I'll have Mrs. Patterson and Danny Rodriguez as witnesses. No relation to you, despite the name. We'll video record everything to prevent any future challenges about your mental state or free will. Monday morning found me back in Tommy's downtown office. But this time, the conference room held additional people. Mrs. Patterson, Tommy's secretary, sat at the polished table with notary stamps and official forms arranged like surgical instruments. Danny Rodriguez, the paralegal, had set up a video camera on a tripod, its red light blinking steadily as it recorded everything. This is a formal will execution, Tommy explained, settling into his chair with the gravity of someone conducting official business. Everything needs to be witnessed and notarized to prevent future challenges. The new will lay open before me, 31 pages of legal language that translated my anger and disappointment into permanent consequences. Page after page detailing the complete exclusion of Trevor Sullivan from any inheritance, the establishment of charitable trusts, the designation of Tommy as executor with full authority to distribute assets according to my exact specifications. Let me read the key provisions aloud for the record, Tommy said, his voice carrying the weight of legal ceremony. The testator, Garrett Sullivan, being of sound mind and clear judgment, hereby completely excludes his son, Trevor Sullivan, from all inheritance due to demonstrated financial exploitation, elder abuse, and threatening behavior toward the testator. The words felt powerful, sitting there in that conference room with the Seattle skyline visible through the windows and 3 legal professionals ensuring everything was done correctly. Furthermore, Tommy continued, the testator designates the following charitable organizations as primary beneficiaries of his estate, valued at approximately $485,000. We went through the list we'd carefully constructed. The Veterans Administration receiving $200,000 for PTSD counseling and job placement programs. American Legion getting $100,000 for medical support and housing assistance. Youth fishing programs receiving $75,000 to teach kids from disadvantaged backgrounds about responsibility and patience. Senior services, community development, food banks, organizations run by grateful people who understood that money comes with obligations, not just opportunities. Mrs. Patterson adjusted her glasses and looked directly at me. Mr. Sullivan, do you understand these provisions completely? Yes, I do. And you're executing this will freely without any coercion or pressure from anyone? Completely freely. This is my decision based on my son's actions and threats. Danny stepped forward with the video camera focused on my face. For the record, please state your full name and today's date. Garrett Tank Sullivan, October 28th, 2024. And you're executing this will of your own free choice, understanding that it permanently excludes your son Trevor from any inheritance? I am. My son has shown me through his actions that he views me as nothing more than a source of money to be exploited. He planned for months to exclude me from a trip I paid for, then threatened me when I objected. He's received nearly $425,000 from me over the past 15 years, and has never shown anything but entitlement and disrespect in return. My signature felt steady on the official documents, each letter deliberate and final. Mrs. Patterson and Danny signed as witnesses, their presence ensuring that no future court could question the validity of my decisions or claim I'd been mentally incompetent. The notary seal pressed into the paper with satisfying authority, making everything official under Washington state law. The sound echoed in the conference room like a judge's gavel, final and irreversible. "The original will remains in our security vault," Tommy said, handing me sealed copies in a manila envelope. "These are your personal records. I recommend keeping one copy accessible and another in your safety deposit box at the bank. When do you think they'll find out about this?" "That depends entirely on when you choose to tell them." I tucked the envelope under my arm, feeling its weight like armor against future manipulation and threats. Trevor's flight was scheduled to land at SeaTac this afternoon. He'd probably want to schedule that serious conversation he'd mentioned in his voicemail, expecting me to apologize for inconveniencing him and restore his access to my bank account. Perfect. I had something to tell him too. 3 days had passed since Tommy sealed the final documents in his vault. During that time, I'd maintained my peaceful routine while mentally preparing for this moment. Tommy and I had confirmed Trevor's flight details, discussed timing, and prepared for what was coming. Alaska Airlines Flight 447 from Montana, arriving at SeaTac at 3:45 p.m. on Thursday. Now, standing beside Tommy in the international arrivals area, I felt the same calm confidence that had carried me through every major decision of my 34-year career at Boeing. The same focus I'd used when troubleshooting complex aircraft systems, when one mistake could ground a $200 million airplane. "Flight 447 from Montana has landed," Tommy said quietly, checking his phone. "They'll be coming through customs and baggage claims shortly." The leather portfolio under his arm contained the documents that would complete our mission. A week of planning, legal preparation, and psychological readiness, all leading to this moment in SeaTac Arrivals Hall. Passengers began emerging through the sliding doors marked "Nothing to Declare," tired families with Montana souvenirs, couples carrying duty-free shopping bags, business travelers checking their phones, the usual flow of people returning from vacations, most of them probably having better experiences than my son had just endured. Then I saw them. Amanda appeared first, looking exhausted and stressed, dragging an oversized suitcase covered with airline baggage tags. Her usual put-together appearance was gone. No makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, the kind of look you get from sleeping in airport chairs and dealing with a week of crisis management. Behind her came Kyle Patterson, Trevor's unemployed buddy, looking around nervously like someone who knew they were in trouble but wasn't sure how much. He'd traded his usual casual clothes for a Montana souvenir t-shirt that probably cost more than he could afford, even with my money funding his vacation. Trevor emerged last, checking his phone with the distracted air of someone trying to reconnect with mainland reality. He looked older somehow, like the week in Montana had aged him. The confident swagger he'd shown at the airport a week ago was gone, replaced by the hunched shoulders of someone who'd spent 7 days dealing with consequences he'd never expected to face. Then Kyle spotted me standing there with Tommy. "Oh!" he said loud enough for other passengers to hear. Trevor's head snapped up, and his face went pale when he saw me beside a man in an expensive suit carrying official-looking documents. His eyes moved from me to Tommy, taking in my lawyer's professional attire and the portfolio tucked under his arm. "Dad," Trevor's voice carried exhaustion and wariness in equal measure. "What are you doing here? Who's this?" "Welcoming you home," I said calmly. "How was your Montana adventure?" Amanda appeared at Trevor's elbow, her expression shifting from confusion to something approaching alarm as she noticed Tommy's presence and the formal way he was standing there, like someone conducting official business. "Tank, what's going on? Who is this person?" Tommy stepped forward with the precise movement of someone who'd served legal papers before. "Mr. Trevor Sullivan?" Trevor's face went completely white beneath what looked like a decent tan from his week outdoors. Tommy extended the sealed manila envelope toward Trevor with the formal gravity of a court officer serving a summons. "Mr. Trevor Sullivan, this is a copy of your father's revised last will and testament, executed on October 28, 2024. Trevor's hands trembled as he accepted the envelope. The airport noise, announcements, luggage wheels, conversations, seemed to fade into background static as everyone's attention focused on the legal document that was about to change everything. "What is this?" Amanda whispered, reading the return address on the envelope with growing horror. Trevor broke the seal with jerky movements. His Montana relaxation completely evaporated. He unfolded the papers and began scanning the contents. his eyes moving rapidly across the legal text that spelled out his permanent exclusion from any inheritance. I watched his face transform as comprehension dawned. First confusion, then disbelief, then something approaching horror as he reached the crucial passages about complete disinheritance and the charitable. Beneficiaries who would receive everything he'd expected to inherit. "This can't be real," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Amanda leaned over his shoulder, reading the same devastating words, her face drained of all color as she processed the implications of what she was seeing. Kyle tried to fade into the background, but there wasn't anywhere to go in the crowded terminal. "Tank," Amanda said, trying to maintain a reasonable tone despite the panic in her eyes. "Surely we can work this out. Think about the future, about grandchildren someday." "I did think about future generations," I replied calmly. "That's why I'm funding youth programs and veteran assistance instead of enabling financial parasites." Trevor's head snapped up from the documents, his eyes blazing with the kind of desperate fury that comes from watching a life plan collapse in real time. "You can't do this to us. I'm your son." "Yes," I said. "The son who excluded me from my own trip, threatened me when I objected, and spent 15 years treating me like a personal bank account." Tommy closed his portfolio with finality. "Gentlemen, our business here is concluded." He turned toward the terminal exit, and I followed, leaving Trevor's group to process their new reality amidst the cheerful chaos of returning travelers and vacation reunions. Behind us, I could hear Trevor's voice calling after us, still trying to negotiate, still unable to accept that some consequences are permanent. But I didn't look back. I'd spent too many years looking backward, making excuses, enabling behavior that should have been stopped long ago. The walk through SeaTac corridors felt different than it had a week ago. Then I dragged my gear through these same halls as a confused, betrayed father. Now, I walked beside my attorney as someone who'd reclaimed his dignity through principled action. Justice served, lessons learned, future secured. It was finally completely mine.